Hello everyone, time for another video. I'm not at my computer, I'm actually in Saratoga Springs, New York, up here with my partner for a conference that I don't have to go to, so I don't really have anything to do except grade and wander around, but I do really need to grade you guys' papers and your speeches and things. Really should be working on grading, but there was a video I wanted to make that I didn't have a chance to make about the upcoming election that I thought I would make today. Just sitting out here, it's a nice day. So I don't think I need too much editing or bells and whistles. So it's going to be a little bit of a different kind of video. Not a lot of video clips in this one. And what I'm going to speak about is this phrase that has kind of become a rubric across the national media about how to decide who to vote for. And it's the phrase, "Are you better off than you were 4 years ago?" I'm going to start with some history of this phrase. This phrase was a statement, a question offered by Ronald Reagan at the end of the 1980 debate with Jimmy Carter, where he said, "Are you better off than you were 4 years ago?" And this was meant to be what we call in rhetoric an enthymematic cap, that is a strong concluding statement in a debate that makes the audience complete the argument. Enthymemes are pretty fraught. The theory of it is pretty bad, the way it's taught in speech communication. But an enthymeme is an argument that at some level draws upon the collective feeling of a group or the collective feeling of the audience, and then they complete the argument with that feeling. It doesn't make it illegitimate. Some of you hard logic philosophy types who watch these videos might disagree with me, but it doesn't make the argument illegitimate. It just makes it harder to answer. So Reagan, the goat of presidential debating, very smart to offer this at the end to say, all you have to do is ask yourself this question: if you are better off, then vote for my opponent. But if you are not, if you do not feel like you're better off, then might I suggest another way, which is his exact quote. I would clip the video in here if I was at home. Now that echoed, it was so powerful, it stayed with us since 1980. It's been around a long time. You hear people use it in presidential debates time and time again. But this year's election cycle was a bit different, where you heard it used in the ABC debate. David Muir, ABC News journalist, used it as the first question. Do you think people are better off than they were 4 years ago? And it's also been repeated by reporters talking to people about who they're going to vote for. I think it appeared in the June 27th debate. You'll have to check me on that. I don't think it did. I have a memory of a version of it there, but I really don't think that it appeared in it. But this is not a good way to determine who to vote for president. The reason why is because, as many of you have probably identified, the question, "Are you better off than you were 4 years ago?" is a begged question fallacy. I'm sure a lot of you have identified that. You know how I feel about fallacies. If you watched any of the other videos in my class or any of the videos that I posted, you'll know that I'm not a big fan of saying, well, it's a fallacy, you have to dismiss it. That's not good argumentation theory or good rhetorical theory. Instead, it makes you question how to answer the question. You could say, well, there's multiple answers to that. It's not a yes or no. So it also could be a false binary fallacy, or lead to that. Why is it a bad question? Well, better off is unclear. What does that mean, better off? Most people interpret this financially. If you interpret it as an economic question and you think it means me personally, am I better off than I was 4 years ago? You cannot use that as your sole criteria for determining who to vote for president. The reason why is the president doesn't have full control over your economic well-being. The president is not a dictator. The president is not an executive at that level. The ways that they can do this is they can sign bills from the Congress that increase or decrease taxation. They can sign bills from the Congress that increase or decrease regulation. And those can have economic effects, but those effects can take years to have an impact, and they're also negotiated heavily by how corporations enact those and how people take advantage and use certain kinds of tax policy. So it takes a long time, maybe more than 4 years, for those things to impact your everyday life. And it's also not directly the president doing it. It's also Congress. So those votes are just as important too. So you should use that as a measuring stick for every race that you vote for in order to stay consistent with your rubric. The other reason is that monetary policy, the interest rate, and things like inflation, which is a big deal, people are arguing about quite a bit in this election, those come from U.S. monetary policy in the Federal Reserve. Jerome Powell, who's the chair of the Reserve, as of this video. It's November 3rd, 2024. So the election's 2 days away, so I probably should have made this video a week ago so that you guys could take a look at it and think about it in terms of argumentation and reason for a little bit more time than before Tuesday. But Powell was appointed by Trump, and he's been the Federal Reserve Chair for a while. Now, according to the St. Louis Federal Reserve Bank website, it takes about a year, or a little over a year, for Federal Reserve fiscal policy to impact the everyday consumer, the everyday citizen. If you're not better off, you could look to maybe it's monetary policy that's doing it. But I think most people think about inflation as the big problem. That would be the Federal Reserve's decision making, and it's worth researching that to determine whether or not you think that monetary policy is in line with the candidate that you want to vote for. You might be surprised what you come up with when you look at that. Another one is your state and local officials have a lot to do with your economic well-being too, not just the president. So this phrase is powerful. This, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? It really hits you in the heart. It is enigmatic, as we'd say in rhetoric. But it might not be the best rubric to determine solely the presidential vote. You have to look at a lot of different factors like foreign policy, preservation of rights and liberties, what kind of laws are going to be and what kind of policies are going to be forwarded to make sure you and your neighbors and your community can live a good life. All of these things need to be military policy, foreign aid. All of these things are much more important, or at least as important, than the are you better off than you were 4 years ago question. So you have to look at all those things. You can't just answer the are you better off than you were 4 years ago question and have a good rubric for determining whether or not that person is going to support your policies. It's deliberative argumentation and deliberative reason, and that requires lots of moving parts because it's about the future. We're voting for the person who's going to create what the future is going to look like. So we need to be very, very careful about how we determine that. And this phrase, are you better off than you were 4 years ago, is attractive to the media because it's so clean and simple and direct. But it might not be the best for us as voters and citizens to use that as the way to decide because there are too many moving parts in the economy. You could say better off in other ways. Are we better off in terms of civil rights? Are we better off in terms of liberties and freedoms? Are we better off in terms of our relationship with our allies in the world? Are we better off in terms of the military? Are we better off in terms of education? Are we better off in terms of health and human services or education policy? You have to ask all of these. And then you have to think of you maybe not just as an individual thing, hard to do in America because we value individualism so much, but maybe as a collective community thing might be a good way to ask it as well. So it's not completely useless, but you can't just ask it the way the media has been asking it and have a solid rhetorical basis for the decision. So that's the video I've been wanting to make. Again, an unusual video. I'm outside. It's really kind of nice out here on the street. Nice Sunday morning. I'm going to go check out some of these shops. And then I'm going to grade because I'm sure that a lot of you watching this are like, where's my grade? Why are you making videos outside in Saratoga Springs? Why aren't you grading my papers? I'm going to do a bit of that today, but I just wanted to get this out of the way because I'd like to post it before we get too close to the election. So happy election day. We'll see what happens on Tuesday, and then I'll be making more videos probably as we get through it and into the other side of it about rhetoric, politics, and the way that language sometimes hijacks the way we think. Are you better off than you were 4 years ago? A great example of rhetorical overdetermination of a decision that should be made not on a simple yes or no, but on a much more complex understanding of how all these factors play into how we experience our daily life when we're out shopping or going out to eat or buying groceries.